بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Just going to go over some things that are intuitive, some of these things, but important to understand that besides the hijab, how men and women alike should practice modesty, but and certain things that are specific to females. So number one, clothing, of course, they should be loose. You look at any traditional Muslim men's clothing, it's going to be loose from the belly button down to the knees. Navel to knees is loose. It should be loose, right? And also depending on the men's physique, depending who's in front of, we should be careful about other things being loose as well. And so being loose is in general the case. And we mentioned the hadith before about women who were dressed and yet undressed. So very much the case for women, it's got to be loose. We mentioned there's no such thing as hijab in the Quran. It's talking about khimar and jilbab. That's what the Quran is talking about. It's not talking about hijab. Hijab is a modern concept, right? So, many people, again, intentional naivety, right? Oh, it is not tight. Sister, it is tight. Look in the mirror before you leave. Is it loose from your head down to past your knees? Yes. Okay, this is what we're talking about, right? So we got to be same thing for a man. You're dressed in a certain way. Some men, it's obvious they're doing certain things, they're appearing in certain places, you're obviously trying to get attention. Don't do that. Be cognizant of it and be careful. Makeup. So a woman who has clear disfigurement, she has a big black line down her face from something, okay, she can put makeup, such a thing, to do that. Otherwise, it's only for her husband. Makeup, right? We saw the verse of the Quran that spoke about super old women. Women who are, they have no sexual attraction, they're not found as sexually attractive. They're told, don't, غَيْرَ مُتَبَرِّجَاتٍ بِزِينَةٍ, they shouldn't be exposing off beautification. So a woman, right, a woman showing off makeup, this is not how you do things. This is not how we do things, right? So, we've got to be very, very careful there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions they should not show they should not reveal their adornments. And so generally, what some of the Sahaba, again, we remind ourselves, some of the Sahaba saying you have to cover every single thing, including the hands and the face and the eyes, etc. But generally, they said, what can a woman expose is she cannot expose her earrings because she has to cover her ears, and she cannot expose her necklace because she has to cover her neck. But she can expose her ring because she can expose her hand, and she can expose her kuhul, right? So kuhul is not mascara. It's not the same thing, right? So even kuhul, again, we're going to have to be careful, okay? And so we have to be very, very careful about how to do that. It is debated. Is it halal or is it haram in public, etc. But at least there's some basis for it, okay? We want to be lenient. There's some basis for it. But stop there, sisters. Just stop there. You don't look perfect. It's okay. You don't look like people look on Instagram. They don't actually look like that. You don't look like people look on whatever. At work, everybody wears makeup and they look like this. You don't. May Allah reward you. May Allah make you a shahida. May Allah make you a martyr of your own appearance. But do it for the sake of Allah. Okay? Don't be that woman who's wearing makeup outside the house. Perfume. So there's a big difference between deodorant, right? You're wearing something so they don't stink, versus perfume that smells nice. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, any woman who puts perfume on and then walks past some men in order that they might smell her scent is a fornicator. She's a zaniya. Every eye that looks at her is a fornicator. So here, obviously, this is somebody who's using that, right? So what the Prophet ﷺ is saying is what we've already said in lesson 1, is that there are other sexual acts that are not sexual, i.e. trying to be smelt by somebody or dressing in a certain way. This is also a sexual act, right? And so, here I guess you say, well, maybe that's not my intention. I don't want to be smelt. I just want to smell nice. I don't want to be smelt by men, okay? Here, when a woman walked past Abu Hurairah, and he could smell that she had very strong perfume on. He said, "O slave of the ever-powerful, Ya Amat al-Jabbar, where are you going?" She says, "Oh, I'm going to the mosque." He says, "And you put on perfume to go to the mosque? Go back and wash it off." And then Abu Hurairah continued by quoting the Prophet ﷺ, who said, "Allah does not accept the prayer of a woman who goes to the mosque while smelling of perfume until she goes back and washes it off." Okay, so you go to work, deodorant, not perfume. Perfume is for your husband, right? Not for anybody else, for at home. Okay? So we have to be cognizant of that and careful of that. Speech. Okay, and again, this is where one of these things that just takes a long time. Women and men, but particularly women, they are socially trained to speak in an attractive way because it gets attention and gets the job done. People like it. Okay, and it's more prevalent in certain cultures than other cultures, and it's a problem. So a woman has to have, number one, understand that the default of your voice, your body, your presence is an attraction to men. That's the default. Just like with a man, right? A woman hears a deep voice. The default is subconscious things trick on. The default is a man in the room is an attraction for a woman. The default is the voice is an attraction, right? So that's the case there, right? So therefore, we're going to minimize speech as much as possible, minimize being heard as much as possible, right? And make sure that you're not playful, right? So there's no joking, there's not playful, and not soft, right? So there's a difference, right? So that means you have to be very formal, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the women, so do not be over feminine in your speech with men, or those with sickness in their hearts may be tempted, but speak in a moderate tone. Right, so in the Tafsir Ibn Kathir he says, this means that a woman should not speak to a non-mahram in the same way she speaks to her husband. Here we have another huge problem, right, which is a huge problem. I don't speak like, when I speak to my manager, I don't speak like to my manager I speak to my husband. Okay, well, that's true. That's because you flipped it, that's why, sister. Right, you speak to your husband in a harsh way, and you speak to your manager in a soft way. Right, it should be the other way around. Right, that's the problem. Right, so we have to have 3 voices. Okay, 3 voices at least. There is the formal voice. I'm around men, very cold and formal, direct, polite, but formal. Get the job done. Minimal emotions. Right, I'm very sorry. You can be assertive. You can say, I'm very sorry to hear about that. We will get on the case immediately. That must have been extremely inconvenient. So you can say certain things to get a job done. Often in a job, while talking to people, you have to exchange emotions, but not that much. Not that much. There's a limit. Okay? So there's a second voice which is soft. For example, I'm talking to a child. Comforting to my brother. Playful to a kid, maybe. To my brother, maybe. To my husband, maybe. That's a different thing. So soft, comforting, and playful does not leave the house. That is not something, if you have to comfort a child and there's men around, you're going to try and do it very quietly. Because, yes, sister, your comforting maternal voice is attractive, and that's why women intentionally act maternal or more maternal in front of men, because it gets attention from them, whether or not they're interested in actually sleeping with them. The point is, we are trained to attract the opposite sex. So women have to be very careful. Oh, I'm going to be heard by somebody who's not my brother, not my uncle, not my son. I need to be very careful with soft and comforting sounds because a man can hear me. And then there's seductive. Obviously, seductive has nothing to do with anybody other than your husband. Obviously, that's kind of clear. So a strong woman is what? Self-aware. I know these different levels. I have total control over these things and uses tools for the purpose. Think Sulaim. Remember Sulaim? How she was careful. She protected her husband's emotions. She built the next generation. She used her sexual prowess to control the situation and build. It was amazing. Amazing situation. Listen to the recording if you've forgotten. So this is how a woman has to be. I'm very, might have different voices, right, for different situations. You might be comforting because I'm with my child on the airplane and the child is crying, but now I'm very careful so that men don't hear me. So I'm very quiet but comforting, right? So you have to be, you know what your surroundings are. I'm very jealous of who is listening to you and how it makes them feel. The next thing then is proximity, right? So the default is as distant as possible. If it's possible to work remotely, we would. If it's possible to shop in different places, we would. That's not always possible. We have to interact with people. It's a reality. So keep it to a minimum. Keep distance to a maximum, right? Distance. There's a hadith. I don't think it's a real hadith, or at least it's extremely weak. That Ibn Hazm and others. Ibn Hazm is very late, right? He mentions in his book the circling of doves. So this is Ibn Hazm, the Zahiri scholar, Ibn Hazm, the Hadith scholar, Ibn Hazm, the great historian as well. He has a book on love. Why are you writing a book on love? What's your problem, Sheikh? Because it's a reality. And so he's looking at it as an academic thing, and it's because it's reality, and it's for literature, and he has poetry, and he collected poetry on it. It's interesting, right? So we have to understand how holistic Muslim scholars are, and they are not robots, right? So he narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, distance men's breaths from even the breaths of women. So try and make sure they don't even breathe the same air. That's the ideal situation, right? Hajj, what are you going to do? So when you read the books of fiqh, what they actually say in the past, right, is they say women should not do tawaf at the same time as men. They say if they do it at the same time, they should be in a different place. And otherwise, they should wait till night to do tawaf. So they're not seen and they're not next to men, right? We're in a predicament today when we have millions of people going. What do we do, right? But it should be as distant as possible. That's not your mahram. He's not your brother, he's not your uncle, he's not your son, he's not your husband. Stay away physically, as much a gap as possible, right? While being practical and looking at the situations, as opposed to feeling comfortable around men, or a man being comfortable. I'm totally fine being around women, socialize with women. The Prophet ﷺ, I should have put it here on the slides, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِيَّاكُمُ الدُّخُولَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. Right? He said, be very, very careful of entering a place where there's women. Right? And they said, Ya Rasulullah, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْحَمُ. What about my brother-in-law? Like, he's not my mahram, but it's kind of family. He said, Al-hamul maut. He said, the brother-in-law is death. The brother-in-law is death. So being very, very careful, as much segregation as possible, while being practical, not being extremes. We realize some people are super not religious, some people are not Muslim, some people are this, some people are that. We have to juggle with lots of things, but in the back of your mind, there's this continuing thing. I want to be as far away from the opposite sex as possible. Right? That's the default setting for men and women. Avoiding public places. So needs base. I need to go to a mall. Hey, I need to go to a market. I have to go fishing, and there's a woman in the boat. What am I supposed to do? I'm in a lift, and there's men and women. What am I supposed to do? Right? But it should be avoided as much as possible. Right? And remind ourselves of the verse of the Quran, and settle in your homes. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. Right? And do not display yourselves as women did in the Jahiliyyah. Don't be out, be inside. The default is women should stay home. Right? There's a family gathering. Women all go to so-and-so's house. Men, you're going to go to the park. Okay, segregation, different things. Women covered, women at home, men outside. That's the default. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, a woman is concealed. She is a awrah. So when she goes out, the devil accompanies her and says, look at me, look at me, look at me. Right? So she wants to... we remind ourselves of the hadith, the woman who said, Ya Rasulullah, I love praying with you. She said, it's better to pray at home. It's better to be at home and concealed and not seen than it is, etc. So avoiding public places is a key thing, right? And for men as well, because in public places, what are you going to see? You're going to see the haram, right? So without being, some kind of weirdo, you have to do these things in a real way, right? So by default, stay with the same gender. If there's non-marriageable kin, right? Family members who are non-marriageable, they're your mahrams, okay. But anybody who you could marry, it's an issue. There was a mufti, he was asked, when do you find zina happening among Muslims? He says it happens. Okay, people are irreligious, etc. But common cases, cousins, because people put their there's a lot of exposure, right? Right. Ibn Hazm, again, this is whatever 1,000 years ago in Spain. He said, there's a story of this woman. She got pregnant. He's like, how did it happen? He said, well, his house, through a relative, right? Meaning a cousin or something like that. He said, yeah. I mean, we lived close to each other, and the night was long. What do you do about it? Right? It happens. Things happen, right? So we got to be careful. We got to be real. Right? This kind of thing happens. And then MSA, right? So in the MSA, what happens is there's young, unmarried Muslims. They're working together. They're religious, so they put their guards down and they feel safe, and then things happen that shouldn't happen, right? And so we have to be very careful. Key concept: avoiding harm, dar' al-mafasid awla min jalb al-masalih, is more important than achieving benefit. So, oh my God, I have to go to the wedding because people would say that. That's not the end of the world, brother or sister. It's okay if they hate you, because if there's that much haram happening at that wedding, you don't really need to go there. Particularly, remember what happened last time? Right? Or I have to go to this mall, or I have to go to this theater. It's like, yeah, but there's more harm than benefit. So it's important. So yeah, I'm going to be realistic. Yes, I'm going to not be like totally rigid. There's situations where you're going to have to be in situations, etc. I can't go to an airport because there's women there. I can't go outside because there's women there. Brother, there's women everywhere. I know. But you have a system in your head. I'm going to try and avoid it. And the part of that system is I know that it's more important to avoid harm than it is to achieve benefit. Unless that benefit is crucial. I have to be at that place. There's no way. This is what's going to happen if I'm not there. Okay, sure. And then be very careful. Right? And then the screen. So a woman by default does not want to be on a screen. Right? So she doesn't want her image to be on a screen. She doesn't want to be seen. That's number one. And a man and a woman does not want to see a screen, right? Why? Because YouTube is the worst place you could possibly be. I'm only sharing it because everyone's on YouTube. What YouTube, Instagram, normal television, your phone. These are huge, like black hole made by the shaitan. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the most beloved places to Allah are the mosques, and the most hated places to Allah are the marketplaces. That's what a phone is. A phone, the internet, it's a marketplace. And it's full of sin, and its sin is there to get money out of you. Right? You put images there. So you see a ridiculous amount of haram, and you're still there. So put on image block, get your image off if you're a female, make sure that nobody can see you, there's no images of you there, you don't want to be seen. That's part of your being female. I don't want to be seen by people. Right? I don't want to be seen by people. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop there. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.